So we're on Learning Outcome 5 for Unit 40, Teaching in a Specialist Area, which is this here. So that is be able to work with others within a specialist area to develop your own practice. And we're going to be doing 5.1, which is liaise with others within a specialist area to develop your own practice. So liaise and work, they're the same word more or less, so just work with others. And 5.2, review the impact of liaison with other teachers and trainers within your own specialist area on your own practice. So when we're working with others, working with other people, with other professionals, colleagues, people that will come in and out of your school, it's extremely important, and it is an important skill as well to make sure that you're collaborating together so that you can have discussions and they can support you and you can support them. So in effect, it's where you're coaching and mentoring each other, and just, you know, even if it's a little conversation saying, I struggled getting Adam to pay attention in our science lesson today, and someone says, oh, well, I've worked with Adam before. In a reception, he really responded well to having a motivator, you know, give him a reward, say you can have this. So, you know, things that you do on a normal basis anyway. So this working together will develop your ability to work with others, and it really has an impact on your employability, because even though we're asked to be independent and work quite with good autonomy for ourselves, team skills are a major thing as well. So being able to have that skill where you can talk to others, can lead them, can be led, can actually implement what they say is also really effective as well. So when you're working with others, for example, some scenarios of when you might be working with others, or when you might be getting your learners to get support from others. So it's when a Key Stage 4 learner might be working with others to support their GCSEs or a vocational qualification. They might have a specialist trainer come in. They might have a teacher that will support them, or somebody on the senior leadership team might have experience in a particular thing that they want to learn about, so you might be working with them. You might want to have a Year 10 learner planning their work experience with a careers advisor, and then also working with outside agencies. I mean, I know work experience has been off the books for a little bit of time now. We've had virtual work experiences where the kids can, you know, join and see how the healthcare work and some of the bigger businesses. But in my day, when I was in Year 10, many years ago, it was where we physically went out and we'd have to gain our work experience ourselves. So I got mine in my local primary school, and I went there for a week and learned how to support our teachers, you know, and all those things. So it's quite a valuable experience when you get to do that. We even had like interview skills. We were sent into city centre in Manchester, and there was a hotel, and we were actually had a staff member from the management team that actually interviewed every single one of us. So it was a nice experience to know how to do an interview, how to dress, how to conduct yourself. So that was, in a way, us working with other people as well, other organizations, other establishments from lots of different businesses. You might have an apprentice for when they want a qualification. So they might be working within an apprenticeship framework where there might be some school-based, some college-based, some work-based. You might even have an offender in prison working with others just to maybe get their GCSEs, maybe get a couple of qualifications, just so they can improve their educational and job prospects on release as well. So this is a bit of a broad area of how we could work with others for different scenarios. For school-based, really when we're liaising with other people, when we're working with others, we're really looking at our colleagues. You know, we're looking at tutors, teachers, support staff. You're looking at, you know, for me, myself, in a further education setting, I look at working with other assessors, other internal quality assessors, administration staff, awarding bodies. You might be looking at a senior leadership team. And then other people like social workers or family support workers, somebody that might come into, maybe there's a family that's on a care plan that needs a little bit of additional support. They might come in and advise you on certain things. And things like where you've had a member of a professional come in to do hearing tests or just to advise you on how to support a particular child. I've worked with behavioural psychologists in the past. So you have a lot of different, like a dental nurse will come in, opticians will come in. So there's a lot of people that will come in and out of your setting and you work with them. Just realised I forgot to say this. So it's 5.1, liaise with others within a specialist area to develop your own practice. So that's what we're talking about. So these are some people that you could be working with. Now, who do you actually liaise with or work with on a daily basis when you're at work?
Mainly with the teacher.
Mm-hmm. So do you have anybody else that comes in?
Well, not at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in the past there was.
Mm-hmm. I'll just be 1 second, Geeta. I'm just going to go close the door.
Sure.
Sorry, Geeta, I was just getting a little loud in the background. So closing some doors would help. So yeah, you said in the past you've worked with others.
Sorry?
You said you've worked with others in the past.
Well, it was not personally me, but it was just kind of involvement that there was a child who was having kind of behavior issues.
Yeah.
And there was like kind of therapist for behavior, you know. She used to come from the council on a weekly basis to observe the child, to see what
for
can be done.
To plan,
spending time with the child, you know.
So you say you've not worked with many other people besides your class teacher, but have you ever had to go to the office to sort out any issues? Or say a child is sick or any of those things?
For medical, in welfare, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you've worked with administration staff. Have you ever had to approach your senior leadership team, your head of year or any of those for any particular reason?
Yes, for my deputy, who was like our leader as well. So I was like, my first approach was basically her till last year, because for anything happening or if something I need support or I need guidance, I used to approach her for that. So
and what about? Oh, sorry, Geeta. And what about training? Have you ever had any training sessions?
Within the school?
Yeah, within the school, outside the school, anything that school has paid for.
Yeah, I'm already doing one now.
Yeah, see? So that's you liaising with someone. So even though I'm not within your school, you're on a training as part of something they sponsored you to do. Even when you're at school, do you know when you're doing first aid training, you might have some staff members that are first aid trained.
Yeah.
You do part paperwork, so online training. Part of it is where a trainer will come in and show you processes and tell you how to do certain things. You have safeguarding training. You'd probably have a member of the safeguarding team come in and do that for you. You know, we show you a couple of videos, get you to fill out forms and say, right, you've done this. You might have had training on how to work some systems, even if it's a 5-minute thing, saying, okay, Geeta, we're going to do this. This is how you do the register, or this is how you log on a complaint. I had something called CPOMs for safeguarding, but it's different software, isn't it, for everywhere? So if you think about it on the biggest, on a daily basis, you only work with your class teacher. You might also work with other TAs. With the video that I observed, you were working with another teaching staff where you were supporting each other. So you do that on a daily basis, but it's the little things as well. Like if you've got an inset day, you'll be coming in. You might spend the day cleaning the classroom, or you might spend the day going around and, you know, somebody might. In my previous primary school, we used to have we'd have a nice little cooking workshop where somebody would teach you how to make something, or you could have, if you'd missed out on safeguarding, you could go in and do that. So you do quite a lot. And then again, people coming in, sometimes you'll work with parents if they're going in on a voluntary basis as well. So, you know, when you really get into the nitty-gritty of it, you do actually work with so many different people, but it's just not in the aspects that you think you do.
Yeah.
And all of this does make a difference. Now, when, for example, you've worked, have you ever had any parent volunteers come into school?
No, due to COVID, not at all.
No. Have you ever had it previously? Because I know you've been here for a couple of years.
Yes.
And when you were there, and was there ever any aspects where you had to support them or get support from someone in general from school?
Well, I guided them what they can do and all that by telling them what to do or what not to do.
And did that help you with your own practice as well? Like, understand how you need to work also?
Yeah, sort of. Like recently we went on a school trip. So that was the best example, just to show them when we are crossing the road, like we need to keep the children, when we are walking on the pavements, we need to keep the children away from the road. So all the children need to be on the one side, and then, you know.
Yeah, make sure you're on the road side. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, there's so many situations where, and I put an example down, but another smaller example is I work with the IQA that's within my current workplace at the moment. There'll be times where I'm not 100% sure on something, or I'll say, right, could you send me a template for this, or what do you think I should do for this, or what do you think? So we have coaching and mentoring sessions, or even a simple conversation where I'll say, Phil, I've done this, but it's not working. What do you think I should do? And then he'll come around and say, okay, Afshar, I think you should take this approach. Or we'd have a bit of a conversation and he'd tweak the answers, make me answer myself, you know, and say, what do you think is the best approach for this as well? So sometimes even having that chat over the phone or in the staff room where you're like, I'm not sure how to help the student, or I've tried this and it's not really working, or the engagement within my students is not great, or I don't get along with this staff member, what can I do? Those type of things do help you to develop your own practice and tweak how you work on a daily basis as well.
Okay.
So I've got an example just to make it a little bit clearer. Okay. So some examples of this are when you can observe other staff members. So when you're just watching someone, sometimes you might be sitting at the back of the classroom, and I found myself doing this quite a lot when I was working as a TA, because our main class teacher, or the Hilter, would take charge of the class. I'd be back in the supporting role, but there'd be quite a few times when it'd be quiet and the kids were behaving, they were watching, they were being good, they were just paying attention. So I'd be sitting in the back and I'd be thinking, oh, this is fantastic. You know, I like what she's just done here. Or, you know, I even remember there was a situation where I learned quite a lot from observing. We were meant to be having a lesson using laptops. The lesson was meant to be teaching the children the functions of a keyboard, showing them where the return is, capital letters, numbers, you know, just the whole layout of a keyboard. We tried to get the kids on the laptops, but that day there was something wrong with the systems. They needed updating, or we just couldn't get anyone logged on. So we couldn't do it. So we spent a good 10 minutes wasting our time, you know, just trying to faff about, trying to fix it. Didn't work. In the end, the Hilter, she just turns around and said, right, we're going to get on with this class now. She pulls up an image of a keyboard on the smartboard. She uses a keyboard. She shows the children what it is. And then she asks each child to come up and say, okay, can you show me where the capital A is? Can you show me where the return is? What is this big long bar in the middle? Does anybody know the name? So it was still quite an interactive lesson, but it was the fact that the kids were getting called up, they were touching the smartboard rather than doing it. So it was nice to see how you can think on the spot.
Yeah.
Originally, I would have thought that, oh, okay, that's it. We just need to go on to a different lesson now. Let's just do our next lesson, comprehension, or let's just read books instead. But it was nice to see that you can adapt these things.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever had an experience where something like this has had to be changed quite suddenly?
No, not really.
That's lucky. That I've only ever had one where something has really gone wrong. But otherwise, things do go quite well, don't they?
Yeah.
So what this really made me do was, especially when I came into adult teaching, if I found that there's sometimes where I've done an induction and my system, I can't log on to it, I'll be like, right, okay, I'll show you in a different way, or I can give you examples. I've got a lot of data on my computer. I'll be like, right, here you go. I'll show you, this is the layout. This is what we do. Or maybe if I've not got access to a particular thing, I've not been onto it. It's not one of the courses that I normally teach, and I hadn't checked my access previously. I'll go on to somewhere else. So you can sort of like adapt how you do. You've got to wing it in a way.
Yeah.
Even things like going to a staff meeting, even discussing what is coming up in the future. You might have staff shortages. You might be worried about whether or not you can keep the provision for the children within your school. You might be worried about certain aspects of how to plan an intervention. You can get tips, you can get advice. There's so many staff members there that will lead you in the right way. Then there's also the flip side where they will try and lead you in the wrong way. But again, it's up to you to judge what to use and what not to use. So on here, you've also, when you're liaising with someone, feedback, as you know, is quite important. So you've got to show that when you're working with others, that you can actually gain feedback from them as well. So you're going to do this by getting student feedback records, assessor feedback records, peer observations. Some of this you've already given me, so you just need to use the same images again into this assignment. On here, I've got a couple of postcards where a tutor has given a student some feedback, just saying, well done, great work, good effort in science. This is a peer feedback where somebody's written that, oh, good handwriting, I liked your sentence structure, things like that. And this is a student feedback, like one of those charts where what I know, what I want to know, and what I will have learned. So the KWL charts, where they're listing what they know before the lesson, what they'd like to find out, and at the end of the lesson, what they found out. But again, those smiley faces, the happy, sad, or the uncertain faces, that is a form of student feedback as well. You'd also need to put an image of feedback that you've received as well. So you can either use during the observation that I sent you previously, you can take a screenshot of that, and on the comment section that I've put that into it. Or if you've got your old TA folder, or if you've had any observations from work previously, you can take a picture of, do you know when you have those feedback forms where it just gives you a summarize of what you've done? You can take a snapshot of that.
I might be having, but it might be old one.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The date's not really going to show on it, and to be honest, it's just showing that you can show what sort of feedback. If it's quite old, just use the one that I gave you a couple of last week, and just take a snapshot of that little section of my feedback on there and add that in.
Okay, so student feedback, which one it will be?
The student feedback will be things like maybe just what you actually physically have. A lot of this, this is more high school based over here. So have you ever had your boys ever come home with a postcard saying, well done, great effort today, any of those things?
On their notebooks, yeah, might be.
Yeah. So student feedback is where you have physically written a note. So it could be in someone's book where you've written, great job, now we need to focus on finger spaces and full stops, that type of thing.
Okay.
Student feedback is also where student is giving you feedback. So, when you ask them what do they know, what can they tell you, and so on, that type of thing. So one of these charts, like a plenary, where they'll let you know what they know, how do they know it, and how much do they know, and what have they learned after the lesson. Sometimes we don't use these in very early years. We normally do verbal feedback instead, where you say, okay, how do you feel? can you answer my questions? And you ask them and just see what their comprehension was. But do you use, I know it's been a couple of years since I was in primary, but do you use those feedback systems where you can either use the happy, sad, or the unsure face with the smile or the sad smile or the line in the mouth to show I wasn't 100% sure on this?
No, not using anymore.
But have you used it previously though?
Yeah, some of the teachers I have noticed they ask about it, but it's just I can say beginning of the year it's their enthusiasm, then slowly it just fades away.
So how do you get feedback from your students? What do you do to find out if they've actually embedded the knowledge or not?
I verbally ask them. So once I finish my group, I ask them if they understood or how they're finding it. Something like, by asking questions.
Right. Okay. So that's fine. Yeah, well, I'll give you an idea of what to do at the end of this session to get some feedback there. So to answer this, if you follow this guide, it's good. So you just need to provide evidence of feedback, so pictures of this. So student, like just something like I've done. So whatever you do, peer-to-peer feedback, where they're giving you feedback, there might be postcards that they might have received, or even a small note where you've given them feedback and said, well done, this is great. Use capital letters. You need assessor feedback record. So this will be where you're going to be including that picture of an observation. Either the one that I did for you a couple of weeks ago or anything previous, whatever is easy for you to get your hands on. Just take a picture and put that in. And then the peer observations are the same as the student feedback. So it's where you're doing, I've seen this already actually in one of the, use that same image.
Okay.
Once you've included those in, you just need to explain who you'd liaise with, who you actually talk to. So who you're working with. So even if it's from admin staff to training to having a behavioral psychologist come in, to having those staff members that come in, and you might not physically work with them, but they work with you to develop your students. You're in the EAL team, where they come in and they take the students away and pre-teach them. You're all, even though you're not having a conversation, you're all working together. So talk about who it is. You might have social workers, you might have the safeguarding team, you might even have parents sometimes come in where you're supporting them and they're supporting you. So just have a little bit of a paragraph explaining who it is, and then explain what sort of context it is, what sort of circumstances you liaise with each other. Do you have student referral meetings? Do you have staff development days where you're taking part in a training? Do you have team meetings? Do you have like networking meetings where you're if you've got a really big staff and you just want to get to know each other? Are you doing coaching and mentoring sessions where you're helping each other in developing your own work, or, helping each other support students? And just explain how it is, so first is who do you work with? Second is how do you work together? Why? And what's the reason? And then if this is applicable, this might not be applicable for yourself. I think it's more for further education or adult education. But if you're ever involved with a standardization meeting is to make sure that you're teaching your content in the right way, and that all the teachers and the staff that are teaching, say, maths, are teaching it in the same way, and they're marking it in the same way as well. So it's not like I would say, right, I'm going to be really harsh and I'm going to mark all of these wrong, but you would say, no, actually, they meet the criteria. Why are you marking them wrong? We need to be working on the same level. And that's what a standardization meeting is for. If you're ever working with an awarding organization like NCFE or ATHE or Pearson or CASH, if you ever speak to them, and with this, I think within your role at the moment, you most likely won't have any involvement with any standardization or awarding organizations. So if it's not applicable, don't put it in. So is that okay? Do you have any questions for 5.1?
No, I'm fine with it.
Okay, dokes. On to 5.2. So 5.2 is review the impact of liaison with other teachers and trainers within your own specialist area on your own practice as well. So this is where you're just talking about when was a time that you worked with somebody else, a teacher or a trainer, and what sort of impact it's had on your work. So you're reviewing that time. So I know you said that you normally work with your class teacher, but have you taken part besides? How about what you're doing right now? We've both been working together for a few months now. And has this had any sort of impact on your work and how you physically carry out your job?
The impact, I can say, I'm getting more knowledge, about the teaching, not within the classroom only, but apart from that, how to plan, how to implement on that, how to record the things, these.
It's more
things.
Theoretical, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
That was one of my pet hates that I used to really, really annoy me, if I'm allowed to say, is when I was doing my TA qualifications. When you're physically doing a program, unless it's an apprenticeship, when you're physically doing a course of study, you can get all the theoretical knowledge, but applying it on a classroom basis, sometimes you find, oh, I've got this knowledge on planning lessons, but my role doesn't involve me in planning lessons now. I've got knowledge on a scheme of work, but my role isn't, I haven't got the responsibility at work. I can't put that into impact. I can't put it into place. I've got all these knowledge on how to do pedagogical research and how to teach students in particular ways and all these little methods and models of teaching. But I don't have that opportunity. And then when you do get that opportunity, half of the knowledge flies out the window because it's been so long. So, but yeah, and I think it goes hand in hand. You need that theoretical knowledge, but you also need to have that practical base. If there was an ideal world where you could do both things in one place together, that would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But again, it does give you a bit of an impact. It helps you know a little bit more on the other side of what maybe your teachers are working at, what goes into their planning, how much time it takes, and so on with that. So I've got an example of when I worked with somebody, and I thought, just to give you an idea of what sort of things we're looking for. Now, this is very brief. If I was going to write this into an assignment, it would be much, much longer and have a lot more detail. But an example of me reviewing the impact of liaison. This is when I was a teaching assistant and I realized that there was a gap in we had a lot of, the area that I'm in, we've got a lot of non-English speaking residents here. A lot of them speak Urdu or Punjabi or Hindi or Arabic. So a lot of them, when it came to them supporting their children, they weren't able to do so. Number one, language barrier. Number two, even when my kids came to me when I was the very first time before I came into teaching, and my son said to me, oh, we're learning phonics. I was like, what on earth is phonics? I don't know what that is. And he'd be like, we're learning. And I'm like, it's not, it's F. Like, no, it's, and I'm like, no. And then he'd say to me, it's, and I'm like, no, that's an F. So, because since we've learned these things, it's been a long time and things have changed. So we had that gap in knowledge where students were falling back with their reading, their comprehension, with their grammar, and especially their phonics. There was a big gap between students where there were students that were barely able to recognize 10 sounds, and then there were students that were doing quite well at it. And what I noticed was the involvement of the parents. The ones that were fine had a high involvement of parents, and they had a better understanding. So I went to my leadership team and I said, this is what I've noticed, and this is what I want to do. I said I want to create a program where I work with them, And because they predominantly spoke Punjabi and Urdu, I said I can support them in that language as well. So with the support of my Key Stage 1 lead, I developed a phonics workshop for my Year 1 class. It was one of those that was going to go on and be implemented throughout the years, but we started off with Year 1. And when I wanted to know exactly, because obviously it was something new for me. I'd never done lesson planning before. I never done schemes of work. I had no clue where to start. So Tracy, she was called. Tracy sat down with me, worked out a load of points on where the kids needed to be focused on. And then we just worked it out. We need to start from, at that time it was just Jolly Phonics, I think we were doing. And we were just going through the sound maps, going through the sound phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, just going through them, helping them recognize what the sounds were, what the diagraphs were, what we called as chatty friends, how do we join things up. And just going through, she just really sat down with me and we were working on a week-by-week basis on what sort of sessions I needed to plan, how I needed to plan them, and what sort of things should be in. When I first started it, and I don't know if I've told you the story before or not, I probably have. My very first lesson was the worst lesson in the world. I'd planned and I planned and I planned. I made really nice PowerPoint, got the parents in. I had around about 10 to 12 parents. We were sat in this enormous theatre, which was the worst idea ever. So everyone's sitting really separate, and it was like we were going to do a concert. I'm stood at the front, and I'm going through this lesson that should have taken me an hour to do. It took me 20 minutes to do, because all I did was talk. I didn't even know, I didn't even follow what was on my PowerPoints. I was flustered. It was my first adult experience when I was teaching. And then I was so surprised that they came back the next week because I thought it was terrible. So I went back to Tracy and I said, this is what happened. I don't know what was wrong. And then she said, because you don't have a lesson plan, you hadn't really put tasks down, you hadn't created activities, you need to not stand up there and just talk at them, you need them to be engaged. So that conversation really helped me and gave me a lot of advice on what I could do. But the best pieces of advice that she ever gave me was when we had, the program was meant to be 4 weeks, but it developed up to, by the end of it, we'd done it for about 12 to 16 weeks, but then lockdown happened, so we had to finish everything off. But the best piece of advice she ever gave me was, number 1, make sure you've got activities, things that you've got to fall back on. And then go around physically, make sure the students, your learners, your adults, whatever age they are in an area which is the right size for them. Don't be too big, don't be too small. Too big a room makes everything seem distant, and then it seems like a theatre thing, isn't it? Too small a room, you're squashed, you need space. So I changed the rooms we were in and made sure we had a nice office. At the end, we only had about 6 or 7 that came regularly. So second piece of advice was, these parents are coming in, they need an incentive. So if they're coming in, spending a good hour with me, the incentive is, right, let's learn half an hour, and then for the 10 minutes in the session, I'll go and get your children, and you can work with them, you can teach them what I've taught you, then I'll take them back, and then we can discuss how you felt. So it was a really nice interactive session, and they loved it. But this type of advice really, when you sit down with somebody that's got a lot more experience than you, and I'm a firm believer of this. I love having those talks. I mean, there's so many things, Geeta, that you could teach me as well. You've been in school for so many years. I've been in school for so many years. We've all had different experiences, haven't we? We don't have the same type of thing yet. So I don't think experience is on how long you've worked. I think it depends on what situations you've been. You might have had more difficult students than myself. I might have had more interaction with parents than yourself. So we can always, but these type of things, they really do help you to develop. But as a result of me working with Tracy at that time, the head of early years, I learned so many new skills. I learned how to make presentations. It was a trial by fire, really. I learned how to make lesson plans. I learned how to engage my learners. She came in and she observed me. She said that from my first day to my last day, from my first observation to my last observation, my time management had gotten so well that I actually stuck to every single point of my lesson plan in the brackets that was without even looking at a watch. So she was very skeptical that I could be able to do that, but she was quite surprised, and she said that, you know, it shows how much effort you put into it. But when you have somebody that you work with, it's really important that you actually focus on what they're saying and actually try and implement it, because there's no point in you wasting your time or their time if you're just going to ignore what they say. But it has to be done in a way that you know you can do, you're comfortable with. But me working with Tracy at that time, I could focus on my sessions, make sure that I knew exactly what I needed to teach. When it came to a couple of months before the year one, what's it called? The phonics test. What's it called again? They call the phonics test, don't they?
Phonics assessment, yeah.
Yes, that one. The phonics assessment. I was able to teach the parents on what are alien words, what are real words, how do we actually conduct it. At that particular time, I had so many parents turn up because it was something that was in everyone's mind. But you can focus on specific areas, you can streamline them, you can run them smoothly. And it got to a point where I actually used to have parents come up to me and say, I'm learning level 2 English, and we're talking about past tense, past present, future tenses, past perfect, and all those. Can you teach that to me next week? So it got where it was really helpful for them. But the whole point is, if I hadn't had that support from Tracy at that time, when I was going to her 3-4 times a week, sometimes, sitting, waiting for her to finish a lesson so I could talk to her, it wouldn't have been to the same effect that it was. So I was really able to get such a good relationship with my parents, and really able to focus on exactly what they needed. So after my long-winded story, many apologies for that.
That's all right. It's good to know.
Yeah, thank you. So with that, all you're really doing is in 5.1, you're just talking about who you work with and why you work with them. That's it. You're just telling us why. You're not really telling me the impact of it. And you're giving me a couple of images to prove that you know how to get feedback. This is what you do on a daily basis and so on. On 5.2 now, you're just going to review the impact of those liaisons. So what sort of impact is it having on your work? Have you benefited and how? What things do you do differently now? So are your teaching methods different? Do you use different resources? Are you doing more inclusive practice? Are you using feedback? For resources, I originally used to use like flashcards and pens, but in the end, I'd sign out the iPads and say, right, everybody, let's do a phonics activity. See how many things you can get right. Can you stand up at the front of the and it's your turn to teach me these sounds now. I'm going to be here's your child. Come and sit next to them. Can you ask them to look at this picture, and can you get them to explain it to you? Or give them a test on these particular sounds. So you can just explain how it's impacted on your work, what changes you made, and if you think it's good or bad. Because it's your review, isn't it? It doesn't have to have a good impact. It could also have a bad impact. So you're just talking about it in that.
Okay.
Right. So do you have anything you want to go over for these? Yeah.
No.
Okie dokes. So we've looked at liaising with others in your primary area to develop your practice, and we're looking at reviewing the impact of this liaison with other members of staff. So